Welcome back to my series, Entrepreneurs Who Work From Home with Their Success Tips. My guest today is Gwen Bortner, who has been working from home for many years. She is an operational strategist and business advisor, and problem solving is her zone of genius. So I'm excited to share her views with you today. You'll learn Gwen's amazing advice on time management, which is not about using special tools, and how she stays connected outside the home as an extrovert. I'm Gail Bates, and I've been an entrepreneur working from home myself for over 20 years, and I specialize in helping busy entrepreneurs navigate the challenges of overwhelm and time management in running a successful business from home in today's fast-paced business world. I am learning so much from these amazing entrepreneurs who work from home about productivity systems and time management that are enormously helpful if you have a business and you work from home. So I'd love you to subscribe to the channel and like this video. And of course, don't forget to hit that bell so you can be notified when I upload more videos. Now, let's learn some great tips from Gwen Bortner. Gwen, so glad you're here today. And I'm so excited to learn from you your success tips as an entrepreneur working from home. I was really impressed with your bio because it says you are a wizard at time management. And so I would love you to...
So first I'm going to say my marketing person wrote that, right?
Okay. I love it. But anyway, I would love you to share how you manage your time effectively, work and personal life and your home office, all of that, time management.
So the first thing that is probably important is to know that I've been working from home long before COVID hit. I started working from home in 2001.
Wow, even before me. I started working from home 2009.
Yeah, so I started working from home in 2001. So it's been over 20 years that I have worked from home. And earlier I was doing more traveling associated with working from home. Then COVID hit and there was a lot less travel than I was working from home, So, and I've had a couple different variations of businesses during that time as well. And so, and I actually worked from home. How long ago was it? It was like in the 90s, like when nobody worked from home.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the 90s. I had a home office in 99. It was either 90 or 91. If you're old enough, that would be like dial-up days and the kind of kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember.
I was doing computer stuff, so it was floppy disks to take it to the client. Really old times. So
you are really experienced at this. So tell us.
Yeah, I had done it through multiple decades and multiple technology and multiple, resources and all of those things. And I have also worked in corporate offices and, been in a much more traditional environment as well, in between various stints. So my perspective is different than a lot of people's perspective because I did get accustomed to it before COVID, right? And was able to establish routines. And I think that gave me a huge advantage by understanding what was going to work and what wasn't going to work, right? Long before having to, in a panic, figure it out, right? I mean, I think that makes a huge, huge, huge difference. And I have always been, I'll say, a time management junkie, for lack of a better descriptor. I started looking at time management and, all of those tools back when Franklin Covey was Franklin Planner. Covey was nobody knew who Covey was back then. So, this was back also like in the early 90s. And my first training I got on the hottest technology of the time, which was cassette tapes. That tells you how long ago it was. And I've always been really interested in it because I think it's such an important thing to be able to manage what you're doing and how you're doing it. But one of the things that I've learned over all of my decades now of experience is just because it works for someone doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. Mm-hmm. And as I work with my clients now, one of the things that we really focus on is what tends to go along with your natural behaviors instead of trying to do what, the experts are telling you to do within your time management. Because the less you're fighting your natural tendencies, I think the more success that you're going to have. And I think a lot of people struggle with time management because they're fighting their natural tendencies. And I think there's all sorts of things that can be driving that, but they're looking at a guru who says, I've got this thing figured out, and it just doesn't match their natural tendencies at all. And so it's just a constant uphill battle. So I have my ways, but I don't necessarily say that my ways are the best ways.
And I think everybody realizes that, but sometimes your way might be someone else's way.
Right. Well, and so with that, I will share a couple of the surprises that always surprise people when I talk with my clients about things. So one of the classic pieces of information is, get up early, eat the frog, do the hard thing, use the morning as your quiet time. Those are all like really, really standard procedures. Wow. That absolutely 100% does not work for me. Right. And people are always like, well, yeah, what do you mean? But you're so effective. You get so many things done. And it's like, yeah, because what I learned is sleeping is the most important thing for me. My bed is the most important thing for me. And so if I don't have any outside obligation, let's say until, 11 o'clock in the morning, I will be in bed probably until 10, possibly 10:30. Even though I had on my calendar, I'm supposed to work on this important thing between 8 and 10. It's like, no, my most important thing is I want to examine the inside of my eyelids. That is my...
You're basically choosing the time you want to work. Is that right?
Yeah. And so what I learned is if I want to get my morning started earlier in the day, I need to have a meeting the first part of my day, because what I will not do is I will not miss an obligation to somebody else.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so a lot of people are like, oh, why would you have meetings first thing in the morning? Well, I know that I will get up at the time I'm supposed to be, and I will be at my desk and I will do the things. Once I'm up, I'm good to go. Mm-hmm. But I need to have a reason to be up. And I've also learned that part of that is, and I'm on the West Coast and a lot of my clients are on the East Coast. And so they like having access to me early in the morning because for them, it's already, mid-ish day. Right. And if I waited until, what a lot of people call optimal time, it's like the very end of their day. And for a lot of them, that's not a good time of day for them. And, but I'm actually good in the afternoon. So a lot of times I will do the, what people call the eat the frog, kind of work at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, because I'm actually okay with that. But I fought that for years, years and years and years and years and years, and would just beat myself up because I wouldn't do the thing that I was supposed to do. And at the moment I said, hey, let's think about it differently, about what will I absolutely do? Changed everything. Absolutely changed everything.
And do you plan your week or do you plan your day? What is it?
I do a combination of kind of four things. I do look at a year once a year. I look at my quarters consistently because I find a quarter is kind of magic. There's enough time to get big things done, but not so much time that they get lost and that you have, too much time. A lot of times when people are only planning for a year, they realize that they've got 8,000 things to do in November because they haven't actually done anything prior to the end of the year. So a quarter helps manage that. And then part of the process that I use and then started sharing with my clients that really love is part of the quarter, we actually then look at the week. What can we do week by week? So the 13 weeks of the quarter. And then for myself, I have a relatively short morning and evening process that I do. So the evening is just to kind of wrap things up, grab, any information I want from the day. And then I kind of pre-look at what my next day is going to look like. And then in the morning, I finish looking at the day and, put any additional tasks and whatnot. So I actually break it down into chunks and use all of them in their own way. At the end of the week, I do an end of week evaluation that also then sets me up for the beginning of the week. For the end of quarter, we have an end of quarter review as well as a beginning of quarter planning. So I'm always doing a combination of both looking back and looking forward.
Right. Yeah. And, that's how I think call it end of day routine and beginning of day routine. It's the same thing. Yeah. So walk me through your day. Okay. What does your daily routine look like?
So my daily routine is never as routine as I would like it to be. So that was one of the other things that I had to finally accept is I am not a consistent player. Some people are really good about being very consistent, and yay for them. Oh, I wish I could be them. But I'm not really, really great about being consistent. I will tell you what I always wanted to be. and then I'll tell you where we have some hiccups along the way. What I would really like for me to do is give myself an hour between my first meeting and when I get out of bed. I'm a quick riser, just quickly get ready. I don't have a big long, got to have 3 cups of coffee, read the newspaper. I'm not one of those people. So get up and spend some time doing some meditation and or some journaling, a little bit of quiet time, focus time. And then, like I said, most of the time, the next thing I do is hop onto a meeting, often with a client. I often have a client meeting. It might not be a client, but usually it's a client meeting. Mm-hmm. And I'm an extrovert, so I actually like having a day filled with meetings, which people are like, what do you mean, you can be on Zoom all day? Back before COVID, I every once in a while would tell my husband, I was like, yeah, I was in meetings all day.
Right.
And, until COVID hit, he didn't understand what Zoom meetings all day were. He was used to being in an in-person environment. He works on a college campus. And so meeting 1 to meeting 2, there's walking time.
Right.
From this location to the other location and some brain processing time. And he had his first day with like 4 hours of back-to-back meetings on, after COVID. And he's like, do you do this all the time? I do this all the time. It's like,
yeah.
I did not understand what you meant when you said I've had back-to-back meetings for 8 hours. I actually am okay with that because I'm an extrovert. I do not recommend it for most people. Almost everyone I've ever heard says no one can do that. It's like, well, it's not actually true.
Is that basically, do you do that daily or do you have certain days of the week that you do that?
I will have pretty full meeting schedules almost every day.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I've added recently, which I'm appreciating, is we're trying to block an hour after the morning set of meetings to make sure that I'm actually getting my butt up off the chair, moving around, having some lunch, not sitting at my desk.
Right. All of those things.
All of those things that really, really are helpful. But it's not uncommon for me to have, 3 hours of meetings in the morning, an hour break, and, 2 to 3 hours of meetings in the afternoon.
Yeah, movement is key.
Movement really, really does help. And but my normal policy is I do my moving in the evening.
Yeah.
After my husband comes home, we go for a walk, we take the dog for a walk, we go out, we talk about what the day was, those kind of things. Back to a lot of people like, oh, you should exercise first thing in the morning. Yeah, it never happens for me. That's another, I sleep through that.
Yeah.
Situation.
Everybody has their own thing.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing that I think is really important for people to own is it's okay if what everyone says works for them doesn't work for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, okay, I'm going to switch things up here. Tell me a little bit about your workspace, okay? What are your best tips for sharing with entrepreneurs on having an effective workspace? How do you set up your office for that maximum productivity?
So I will say I have been, I don't know if I'm going to say lucky. I'm going to say lucky, but it's not necessarily lucky because it's also planned. Anytime I have worked from home, I have always had a separate room.
Right.
That was for that purpose.
Yeah.
Even when I lived in an 800 square foot house, which was my very first house back in the 90s, there was a little back room that I used as my office, different than my bedroom space. Now, I know not everybody has that possibility, but I really think the more you can separate your workspace from any of the rest of your spaces is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Because then you can really draw the line to say, am I working or am I not working? Right. One of my policies is I don't work anywhere but my workspace.
Right.
Even though I have a laptop, it does not go into the living room with me.
Yeah.
It does not go into the kitchen with me. It may occasionally, if I've got 2 or 3 people here that we're working together on something, that's a specific moment in time. But when I'm working by myself, in my normal environment, my first rule, and it's always been my rule, is I only do work in my workspace, so that I'm really able to mentally separate I'm working versus I'm not working. Because I think that's the biggest issue from people working at home is they feel like they can work all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're working, at the dining room table or the living room couch or whatever else, it's really hard to mentally separate. Am I working or am I, is it family time?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's really great advice for entrepreneurs. Do you declutter at the end of the day? Do you, is there
I wish I did. I'm not, I'm not great about that. So the couple of things that I get, I've gotten better about and that I really like is one, put things that make you happy, and or inspired to do the type of work that you do. In places that you can see, or that you'll be reminded, about it. I think that's a really important thing so that it's not just this plain space. Like you've got all those beautiful photographs and your collections in the background. And even though you can't see them, you can see them when you're on sale, like that. Yeah, exactly. And I love, I love that kind of thing so that you are personally inspired by your space.
Right.
That's number one. And then for me, I'm not great about decluttering. I'm relatively organized. It's not horrid in here, but I wouldn't also say that it's amazing in here either. But because I have housekeepers come in every 2 weeks, I make sure everything is cleanable, which means a lot of things have to be put away. At least once every 2 weeks. And I actually have that as one of my things on my task list is like, get everything in the office cleaned up the day before they come so that when they come, they can actually do their job.
Do you work from a to-do list, a task list?
Oh, yeah. That was one of the things very, very early on that I started doing and loving. And it's because it's my personality. Nothing makes me happier than the checkbox.
You and I are kindred spirits.
Yeah, I love the checkbox, right? I've gotten better, but, back in the day, sometimes I would put things on the list that I'd already done just so I could check it off,
Yes. But then I have, it goes to the next to-do list.
So I'm a big task list person, and I really like working off of a task list. And have used different variations of software at various points in time. But for me, the list of knowing what are all the things that need to be done and having a way for me to put something down that doesn't need to be done right now, but still needs to be done, and knowing that I won't lose track of it.
Yes, that is the key. As I said, things get taken from the to-do list that haven't been done onto when you're redoing the to-do list.
Yep.
It keeps getting on there and stays on there, which is, so important because otherwise it would just disappear.
Yeah. It's one of the things people talk about open loops, and by making sure that it's someplace that it's not going to get lost, then your brain isn't trying to hold on to it, back here.
Yes.
I don't know about your brain, but my brain is feeling very full these days. And so I don't want it being used on things that aren't actually.
It's getting it out of your head and onto paper. That's basically what I love to talk about. Yeah. Okay, so tell me a little bit about you and what your challenges are. What do you face working from home as an entrepreneur? And tell me a little bit how you overcome them.
So this is going to sound horribly snotty, but I don't have a whole lot of challenges. But I think it's because I've been doing it for so long.
Right.
I think, early on when I probably did have challenges, and like I said, it's been decades now. So it's not like, the last 3 years. It's been long enough that I've solved them and they've worked well that I'm not even sure I know what they are.
How about distractions? Are there distractions?
Because I keep a really, really separate space, I don't have a lot of distractions. It's not uncommon for me to put in, a load of laundry. Well, actually, my husband's amazing and he puts in a load of laundry. But I really don't get distracted by it because I'm not one of those people. It's like the laundry will wait. It's not, nothing's going to explode. Nothing's, it's not going to do anything crazy. And if anything, like when I take a lunch break, you're like, oh, yeah, I could put the laundry in the dryer,
Right.
kind of a thing. But I don't get lots of distractions because really I know when I'm at my desk. I was
about to say that. Yeah, you have planned everything out. And so you have planned around any distractions that might happen as well.
Yeah, the biggest distractions I have are what I would call work distractions, like checking email too often sometimes, and those kind of things. But the outside distractions really rarely happen for me. I actually like to be able to see outside, so I face a window.
Right.
But I can't see the whole thing. But occasionally something's happening out there. It's like, what's going on? But I'm also not like in a busy area or anything, so that it's there's not much ever going on, right?
Yeah. How do you handle the email thing? I mean, do you say to yourself, I'm only going to check my email once?
I would love to say that's what I've done, but that's just not my personality, even though I will encourage a lot of my clients to do that. But it really comes down to what's your personality. But one of the things that I did way early on, before anyone was talking about it, is I don't have any of my notifications turned on.
There you go. That's a good one. Yeah.
So I don't know that there's new email. I'm not getting binged. I'm not, If I look at my email, which I will often do because I'm looking for something particular, and it's like, oh yeah, and I got these 3 new emails, and I may or may not deal with them at the time. And even though I have email on my phone, no bings from the phone. The only thing that could distract me is text messages or phone messages. But I'm also old enough that I haven't developed a whole bunch of people who are sending me stuff all the time. So generally, if I'm getting a text message or a phone message, I mean, there's some spam stuff that pops up every once in a while. But for the most part, it's actually something that I may want to see or know. And I have an elderly mother. She's 94, still totally getting around and doing all sorts of things. But that's part of it, is she'll either text me or call me. And I want to make sure that if she does, it's probably important, not always, but it's probably important. And, and I want to respond to that. But because I don't have children, we haven't talked about that, but I don't have children. They're not calling me and pinging me. I have a husband who works. If he calls or pings, it's usually like there's something that he. The
bottom line here is that you're not tied to notifications.
I am not tied to notifications.
I think a lot of people, and you may see this in your coaching practice, that a lot of people are definitely, any kind of ding, any kind of notification. I've noticed with some of my clients, I actually hear it. I'll hear the ding, and then they're not trying to look at it because that's, in today's world, that's what they're primed for. Any ding, anything.
Oh, yeah.
Why I think when we're coaching or when we're sharing information, it's important to say, turn off all notifications. And you hear that so many times, right?
Well, and people feel like they're going to miss something, but you and I are both old enough to know that, like, we probably ran around as kids and no one actually knew where we were. And
oh, yes.
but we're used to just having such instant access now to everything. And, each subsequent generation has gotten more and more conditioned to have instant access and knowledge to all things that they feel like it has to be that way. It's like, doesn't really have to be that way, and
has not. And I think that's important for people to understand that you can turn off the notifications and you can get on with life. It's very interesting.
Well, and I don't know about your clients, but all of my clients, none of them are doing anything that's life or death.
Right.
So if it took an hour to them to respond to a potential client, it's not like my client has bled out and now.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients that have young children, so that's a little bit different. And like our friend Tonya, in her video, she talks a lot about how she has educated her children on how to interrupt her with those distractions. And I think that's really important in today's world as well.
Right. Yeah. And so there's a balance of understanding, what and who and when and how and, all of those things. But I think we have conditioned ourselves to believe that if we don't respond, someone's going to be instantly upset. But I often ask the questions like, but if they didn't respond to you in 30 seconds or less, would you be upset? And they're like, no, of course not. I was like, why do you think they will be?
Okay, so you've been working at home for quite a long time. You're a great extrovert. You love to talk to people. You love people. What way do you stay connected? Apart from, having clients, what ways do you stay connected? Do you get out of the house and meet people? Are you part of networking groups? Do you schedule conversations? What's the best way that you could offer the people that are listening to this or watching this today, how you stay connected?
So I now work in town, but I used to work at literally it was our family ranch property that had hundreds of acres on all sides. And as an extrovert, every once in a while, my husband would come home and he would say, oh, we need to get you into town. Because even though I was having Zoom conversations, it's a little bit different. And it wasn't necessarily interacting with anybody. It could be going to the movie, but just having a few people sit right. Yes. Or going out to dinner and just having some other people around you. So I don't quite have that issue anymore. But I find that the conversations, even Zoom conversations, really fulfill a huge percentage of my need to be in contact. And of course, I do have lots of client conversations that are going on all the time. And, I work really hard to curate my clients. So I love talking to every one of my clients. It's like, oh, I've got to talk to so-and-so. It's never that. It's always like, going to have a great conversation. But I also do put time on my calendar to go to virtual group networking events.
Right.
And inevitably we'll meet one or two new people that are interesting, and so then I'm also really good about scheduling one-on-one, people call them copy chats or catch-up calls or whatever. And I will do that ongoing. It's one of the things that I actually kind of excel at is staying in contact with people long-term.
Yes.
And reaching out and saying, hey, we haven't talked in a while, would you like to have a one-on-one chat and maintain that relationship, because I like having all of those relationships. We talked earlier, I like to refer people. So I like staying current on what people are doing. So I know who can I refer, when can I refer, those kind of things. And I find that the virtual networking events do a lot. I'm in a relatively small town, so there's not lots of options for in-person networking events. So I'm less likely to do that. But I do belong to a couple groups that are, I'm not too far from San Francisco. I say not too far. It's like a 2 or 3 hour drive. So it's not like, close. Right. But occasionally I will make the drive to go over and, be at one of those in-person events for all of the same, all of the same reasons.
And I think that's really important for entrepreneurs who work from home. I think you can get isolated, even though we have Zoom and we can talk to people. I think that face-to-face connection makes a difference. And I think as entrepreneurs who work from home, we have to sometimes really think about it and schedule it on the calendar. Because like you said, which I loved what you said, oh, I found this person to be really interesting. And I think it probably happened because you had a face-to-face conversation rather than something on Zoom, right?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that I find also is I do make a point to go to bigger events that are, that I'm really having to travel to that I think are going to be of interest or value or, good relationship building, whatever the case may be, at least a few times a year.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the questions. One of my questions was actually, it's about your personal investment in you, right?
Right.
So it's investing in you for you and your career. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So it depends on the type of thing I'm doing. I don't do a lot of courses because I have found over time that courses often are a little more constrained than what is actually useful for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm often an out of the box person, and sometimes that just makes me a problem child. So I don't do a lot of those kind of events where they're going to take me through their process. Mm-hmm. Occasionally I will. I don't say it never happens, but I'm very, very selective about those. But I will go to gatherings of like-minded people. So, for example, I have been doing speaking kinds of things for a very, very long time. And so I joined the National Speakers Association. And they have two, I'll call them national events. One's coming up in just a couple of weeks. And one they usually have one more in the late winter, early spring kind of time frame. And one of my commitments has been to go to at least one or the other every year. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily go to both of them because it doesn't always make sense, financially, et cetera. But over time, I have made connections there. And so it's a place that I can, reconnect with those people and talk with those people. And not always the entire agenda is appropriate to where I am because I'm not doing speaking as my only business. My primary business really is business advisory services. But there's always something interesting. And part of it is going in to say, is there a nugget? Is there something? And other times I'm going because I'm looking for something that is like, this seems like something that would be of interest. It's not something I'm familiar with from before or whatnot. And it's more of a learning environment. So I tend to do more of those kind of things where it's more of a group thing as opposed to a programmatic,
right. I love that. I think the point is you make a commitment to do it, to actually.
Yeah, and I do. And part of it is really looking at is the money that I'm going to invest between, the event, the travel, the hotel, all of those things. Do I feel like it makes sense either from, a return on investment point of view or just what I'm needing to fulfill myself? Because I understand those aren't necessarily the same, and that's okay. But looking at them and not just going to everything, because that is also kind of my tendency.
I think that's wise advice. And I think what you said, as for entrepreneurs who are listening that work from home and looking at professional development and investing in themselves, is making a commitment to one or more events that are really going to help you rather than spending a lot of time going to many events, right? And not getting out what you really need. So really discerning what is really important for you, I think, is the key here, right?
Yeah, really looking ahead of time and thinking about it and saying, will I be happy I spent this money when I leave this event?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a really great advice for people. Okay, so I want to switch here to technology and tools, okay?
Okay.
Because as you probably know, for myself, I call myself not a techie, but I love to learn new things. I'm always ready to learn about the new online tools that are available, especially around productivity. Do you have any favorite online tools or technology tools that you'd like to share?
So I'm kind of weird because I came out of the computer programming world, the PC world, when it was brand new. So I started working as a custom programmer for PCs back in '84. So I've been playing with those PC, kinds of tools for a very, very, very long time. And my husband, who's also in the IT world, calls me a super user because I can figure out any tool really, really fast. It's just part of my nature. But even with that background, I'm not one to explore lots of tools or change tools very readily. Part of it is because of my background. I know that changing from one to the next can actually be really, really costly. People don't realize the cost of time and investment and, all of the things that go along with it. So I don't switch tools very often. And so sometimes that means I'm using old tools and people are like, why are you still using that? And it's like, well, because it still works. I don't actually need to do the most current thing. And the other thing I found, and I think is really important to note, is often people think that their fix to their time management issue will be a new tool.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Your task management, time management piece has nothing to do with the tool.
Right.
Now, if you hate the tool,
right,
that's not going to be good for you either, right? And so I'm really, when, my folks will ask me about what time management tools do you use? It's like, well, there's a lot out there. And part of it is which feels the most intuitive to you. What are you going to get into easy enough? And then my second question is, but what are you not going to dig into so deep that you just spend time playing and exploring and not actually using? Because that Well, yeah, exactly. And it's one of the things that we do that we convince ourselves is productive work that's just procrastination. It's not actually creating any value, right? So my first rule always is don't change tools unless it's no longer functioning for you.
Right.
Yes. Sometimes it's because they're going out of business, or there's lots of reasons why you may make the choice. But so that's always my first rule. So the tools that I currently use, back to these work for me. I'm not recommending them for anybody else necessarily. I use Asana for task tracking, and one of my rules for task tracking is it has to have a natural recurring process. Mm-hmm. Where you can set up a number of days or number of weeks or number of months or whatever, how often it recurs, because I use that a lot for my own management. And for a long while, there was a lot of tools that didn't necessarily do that, so that would eliminate tools for me. I have been using Acuity as my scheduling software for a really long time, long before it was bought out by Squarespace. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a really long time. It was pretty new. And at the time that I chose it, it had a couple features that currently I'm no longer using, but were really important to me at the time. Every once in a while, I debate about changing to a different tool, but it's like, is it really broken or is it not broken? Back to, even though, there's some other really good scheduling tools out there, I'm not completely convinced yet that I need to change. But now my requirements are different than they were before. So I would look at it differently than I did when I originally got it. We have standardized on Google Workspace for our internal, for our internal processes.
Yeah.
So, we use it for document sharing, for our calendars are on Google. Our email is on Google. Right. We don't use the Google Task piece because it was a little iffy back when we were standing. Every once in a while, we look at it and say, should we, shouldn't we? We also use Slack for our internal communications. And one of the things that we did, truly was probably only a couple of years ago, but I read it as part of coming up for air, which it was written by Nick Sonnenberg. And it's the idea of knowing which tool you use for which thing, right? So one of our rules is for internal communication, we only use Slack unless we are forwarding an email from outside, and then we will use email. But email is for outside communication. Slack is for internal communication. And so that didn't seem like that big of a deal at the time. I can't even begin to tell you how much time and confusion that.
Right.
Even with our tiny little team of 4 people.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That are all working part-time besides myself. And like I said, initially it was like, well, that's not going to make that big of a difference. Oh my gosh, made a huge difference. And so part of that is also knowing which tools you're using for what, when. Yeah. And really holding to that rule. So for instance, we don't phone or text unless it's an emergency or like I'm traveling, there's some rules about I'm traveling or whatnot. But otherwise we don't unless we've gotten permission. Like occasionally I'm going to catch up with Tanya, my marketing person, as she's going to pick up her kids at school, which is a half an hour drive. And she's like, can I call you? Yeah, absolutely. Call me. We'll talk on the phone.
I love that. I think I really think that's super advice for entrepreneurs who work from home.
Yeah. To really understand which tools you're using, where and why. And, if you don't have a team, then having something like Slack doesn't make sense.
Right.
But I know some folks who use Slack. That's how I communicate with my clients. Email is only for non-client communication. It doesn't matter what the rules are, but being consistent about it and knowing that's what you're
setting it up so that you know what to respond to. I think that's the most important, right?
Yeah, and understanding, is it urgent? Is it not urgent? What's going on? Like one of the rules is if I call, there's a high probability there's something urgent going on.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Slack is designed to be, asynchronous. It's not necessarily an instant kind of tool. And so,
right, exactly.
So we have, some kind of guidelines around that. I'm not sure we have them specifically documented, but, we're pretty clear about what we're using, when, where, and how, why.
That's very, just being clear with your team, even being clear with your customers, your clients, even being clear with your family on the rules of communicating, right?
What is a huge difference. And these are the things where, we're talking about time management that don't feel while you're doing it like it's that big of a deal until you stop doing it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden at the end of the day, it's like, I've done as much as I've done every other day, but I still have 3 hours left. How did that happen?
Yeah. Yes.
It's like, well, because you didn't waste 3 hours in little 10 and 20 chunks that you didn't realize were adding up as much as they were.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, the big question here is, how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance, especially when your workspace is within your living space?
Well, so 2 things here that I feel really strongly about. First is, I don't actually believe in work-life balance because that always makes it seem like it's even. It's not even. There are times that work is more and life is less, and there's times that life is more and work is less. And so for me, it's about making that adjustment. And so I always feel like I have to say that because a lot of people, when you say balance, they really think it's
I think that's a really great analogy,
right? Yeah. So it's not balance, but it's being conscious about where are you spending time, because there are times that work takes way more time than I would typically want it to, right? But it's just what needs to happen given any number of circumstances and scenes and seasons and times and scenarios and all of that. But so long as it occasionally goes back the other direction, then I think we're okay. But I really would say, I already said the way that I'm able to manage it is I have a separate space. And so I can very, very quickly say I'm working, I'm not working. I'm not working.
It's walking in and out of your office. Yeah.
Right. And that it's a very separate space and that I only do those things there. So I occasionally will do something on my work computer that is personal based, but I really don't do a lot of that either.
Yeah.
Like, I have hobbies that are not computer-based hobbies. I used to be a professional knitting instructor, so knitting, I knit, and I also quilt. And both of those things I don't do in my office space. Occasionally I'm pulling a pattern down off the computer, but that's like, a moment, and then I'm.
Okay, we have to talk later. Those are the two things I do as well.
Oh, well, see, you and I, we're the same. We're sisters from another.
But I think your advice on having a separate space, being able to walk out of that space and into the other part of your life, which is the personal part of your
right. And I know, like I said, not everyone has the luxury of having a literal physical space that can be different. But I know, you talked with Tanya a couple episodes back about that, hers is actually in her bedroom, but she's got it,
Yes.
walled off, with desks and file cabinets and things.
And instructions on how to connect with her.
Yes, exactly. And so but her knowing that the second that she walks out of that space,
yes,
she is not working.
And I think this is such valuable information for those who are watching today, who are working from home, who maybe have to work off their kitchen table, or, like Tanya does, out of her bedroom. Those of us who do have their own separate space, their own separate office, does make it a little easier. But, you just have to set the rules, right? You just have to. And it's not about setting the rules for everybody. It's actually setting the rules for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I've got another friend who works off of her dining room table, and she kept trying to do something else. She's like, I really actually like being here. I like the view that I have from my dining room table, and all of the things. But she also knows when she's not working, right? And I can't remember if she actually, closes things down and, packs them away, or if they don't really use the dining room table for other things. And so that has become, because a lot of people have dining room tables that they don't use.
They don't use, yeah.
So I can't remember which hers is, but it was the same thing. She, she understands this is her space and her time.
Yeah.
And, and so, and for some people, they've got to get out of their home space. Yeah. They've got to go to the coffee shop once,
And I think, that's exactly, it depends on the season of your life.
It depends on the season. It depends, there are so many right answers to this, but I think being clear for yourself about when you're working and when you're...
And getting things done. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Is
really makes the difference. The folks that I know have always had the biggest issue is when they're trying to work in between all of the other things going on in their life, and they're working everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And, there's a season for that if you're taking kids or whatnot, but still being really clear about, am I just waiting for my kids? So I'm going to do some work in the car. Great. If that actually works for you. But are you sitting on the couch supposedly watching, the latest Disney princess movie, with the kids, or are you working?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because when you start mixing those, that's when I think the lines get really blurry.
I think I agree. Yes. And that's why I'm big on planning. I do believe you need to plan your day, you need to plan your week, you need to plan your months, and you have a guideline when you have a plan.
And then I'm also really big about paying attention to making sure that I have some time, a full day, where I am not working.
Yes. I think that's such great advice. Yeah.
And so I may check email, but I make no mental commitment to respond to anything.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if I check it. But a lot of times I don't. And everyone's always like, you didn't check email. And it's like, I'm not working today. And one of my previous jobs, I often would work over the weekends. And what I would have to say is, it's okay that Wednesday I'm not working.
Right. Yeah.
Because I've actually worked 10 days in a row, and now I need some time.
Choosing the hours that you want to work, and they're your hours, is so important.
Yeah. But I think people forget that they need really at least one full day most weeks to not work so that their mind clears, that they get those creative ideas, that they do all of those things. And when we're just nibbling at it all the time, it just never feels like you get the break. And I think the break is really important.
I agree. And I mean, I think that is, again, such great advice for entrepreneurs who work from home because, if you love what you do,
it's easy just to walk right in.
Yeah. You feel like you're not working, right? That it is one of those things we have to separate. Well, Gwen, this has just been so helpful for so many people. I'm sure they're going to be listening to all the great advice you've given us today. So tell us a little bit about where people can connect with you, what services you offer, if you have a lead magnet that people can connect with you.
So we at Everyday Effectiveness are really focused on helping the engine of your business run smoother. And when we say run smoother, we really mean that it's fully aligned with you, your values, the business, the product, all of the aspects, that we're removing as much friction as possible. And most of the time, this is all on the non-client facing stuff that really needs to have that done. We're usually very aligned on our product and our offering, but we're not aligned on the way that we're running the business, the way the business is running. And so that is our primary focus at Everyday Effectiveness, is to help get those things aligned. And we have a number of service levels that we offer, and you can find more information at everydayeffectiveness.com. And we have a couple different, lead magnet possibilities, but our we've got two things that we're really doing right now that are the best way to connect with us. One is we have a monthly book club that's free to come and join. It's a 1-hour discussion on the third Wednesday of the month. And you can find more information at smallbizbookclub.com. And the other is just our Gear Shift, which is our newsletter that we offer. And, it'll give you ongoing information that often it's things that I'm seeing with my clients. It's like, oh yeah, we've been talking about this. This is probably a really useful thing for you to be thinking about as well. Sometimes it's tips like what we talked about today about effectiveness and time management and some of those things. And you can find that via our homepage at everydayeffectiveness.com as well.
Great. Well, we will make sure that we list all of those links below for everybody as well to connect with. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that book club as well.
It's really fun because it's just a really casual discussion, and we're really enjoying doing it because it's really about helping you apply all of that great knowledge that we find in these business books to your small business. Because, often the examples are Nike and Apple. And it's like, I am not Nike. I am not Apple. How do I apply that? And so those are the conversations that we have. And we find it really, really fun conversations.
Gwen, it's just been delightful to talk with you today. I know that so many people are going to get so much from this interview.
I have loved this conversation. It has been so fun for me as well.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Gail.
Wow, I definitely think Gwen's advice about having a separate workspace is so important. And I know a lot of us can't do that, but there are ways to make it separate. I love how she handles her to-do list so things just don't fall off into space, right? And what about her advice on using the technology tools that feels most intuitive for you? Because, there's so many tools out there. So if you were to find one tip that resonated with you today, then mention it in the comments below because I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe and be ready to learn more tips about working from home in this series. I have more videos coming up, and I'll see you on that next video.